The beggar who shared his last meal, a story that will change how you see kindness forever. A frozen hand reached for the last piece of bread. Two hungry eyes watched. What happened next shocked an entire city. The winter wind cut through the streets of Chicago like 1,000 knives. Most people hurried past, collars turned up, eyes down, rushing toward warm homes and hot dinners. But on the corner of 5th and Main, beneath a flickering streetlight, sat a man the world had forgotten. His name was Thomas, though no one had asked in years. His clothes were layers of donated rags, his beard was matted with ice, and his fingers were blue from the cold. In his trembling hands, he held something precious, half a sandwich. Not a feast, not even a full meal, just half a sandwich he'd found in a dumpster behind the bakery. It was all he had. Thomas raised the sandwich to his cracked lips, ready to take the first bite he'd have all day. His stomach twisted with hunger. But then he heard it, a soft whimper, a sound so quiet that most people would have missed it. There, huddled against the brick wall, was a dog. Not a proud, well-fed pet, but a creature as broken by life as Thomas himself. The dog's ribs showed through its dirty fur. Its eyes were dim with exhaustion. It was dying. Thomas looked at his sandwich, then at the dog, then back at his sandwich. He knew what hunger felt like, the gnawing emptiness that never left, the weakness that made every movement feel like climbing a mountain, the way your mind got foggy and your hands shook. The logical choice was obvious. He needed this food. He found it. It was his. The dog was just another casualty of a cruel world. But Thomas did something that would change everything. He tore the sandwich in half. Are you ready to discover what happened when one act of kindness created a miracle? Keep reading, because this story is about to take a turn no one saw coming. The gift that asked for nothing. Thomas extended his hand toward the dog, offering half of his half sandwich. Just a few bites of bread and a thin slice of ham. In the grand scheme of things, it was nothing, but in that moment, it was everything. The dog didn't rush forward. It had been hurt too many times to trust easily. Its ears flattened, and it watched Thomas with cautious eyes. Thomas didn't move. He just kept his hand extended, speaking softly. "It's okay, friend. I know how it feels. I know." Minutes passed. The cold bit deeper. Thomas's arm ached from holding it out, but he didn't pull back. Finally, slowly, the dog crept forward. Its nose twitched as it caught the scent of food. Then, with a gentleness that broke Thomas's heart, the dog took the offering from his hand. They sat together in the darkness, two forgotten souls sharing a forgotten meal. Thomas chewed his portion slowly, savoring every bite. The dog did the same. And, for just a moment, neither of them was alone. When the food was gone, Thomas expected the dog to leave. That's what everyone did, eventually. People took what they needed and moved on. But the dog didn't leave. It moved closer to Thomas, pressing its thin body against his leg. And there, on that frozen Chicago street corner, the dog lay down beside him. The warmth of another living being was something Thomas hadn't felt in 3 years. He reached down carefully and touched the dog's head. The dog didn't pull away. Instead, it looked up at Thomas with eyes that seemed to say, "Thank you. I see you." Thomas felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. "I'll call you lucky," Thomas whispered, "because maybe, just maybe, we both got lucky tonight." As the night grew colder, they huddled together for warmth. Thomas wrapped part of his ragged coat around Lucky, and the dog pressed even closer. That night, for the first time in years, Thomas didn't sleep alone. The days that followed. When morning came, Thomas expected Lucky to be gone, but the dog was still there, watching over him as he slept. From that moment on, they became inseparable. Lucky followed Thomas everywhere. When Thomas sat on his usual corner, Lucky sat beside him. When people walked past without looking, Lucky looked back, as if to say, "This man matters." When Thomas searched for food, Lucky searched with him, but never took more than his share. Something strange began to happen. People noticed. A city full of people who could walk past a homeless man without blinking suddenly stopped when they saw a homeless man with a dog. They saw the way Lucky stayed close. They saw the way Thomas shared everything he had. They saw something that moved them. A woman named Sarah was the first to really see them. She walked past Thomas's corner every day on her way to work at the law firm downtown. For 2 years, she'd never given him more than spare change. But one morning, she stopped. "Your dog," she said. "He's very loyal." Thomas looked up, surprised anyone was speaking to him. "Yes, ma'am. Lucky here. He's my family." "Lucky," Sarah repeated, smiling. "That's a good name." She reached into her purse and pulled out a $20 bill. "For both of you." Thomas stared at the money in shock. "Ma'am, I can't." "You can," she interrupted, "and you will. Buy yourself and Lucky a real meal. You both deserve it." This is where the story gets incredible, because what started as one act of kindness was about to multiply in ways no one could predict. But first, you need to understand something important about the power of compassion. The ripple effect of compassion. Word began to spread about the homeless man and his loyal dog. Sarah told her colleagues at the law firm. A blogger who witnessed Thomas sharing his breakfast with Lucky wrote about it. Local news picked up the story, and suddenly, Thomas and Lucky became something more than invisible people on a street corner. They became a symbol. People started bringing food, not just spare change, but real meals, sandwiches, hot soup, dog food for Lucky. A veterinarian named Dr. Martinez heard about Lucky and offered to examine him for free. She discovered Lucky had a treatable infection and provided medication at no cost. "Any dog this loyal deserves to be healthy," she said, scratching Lucky behind the ears. "And any man this kind deserves support." But the most remarkable thing wasn't the food or the medical care. It was what Lucky gave back to Thomas. Thomas had spent years invisible, speaking to no one, acknowledged by no one. Depression had wrapped around him like chains. But Lucky changed everything. The dog gave Thomas a reason to wake up, a purpose, someone who depended on him. Thomas started taking better care of himself. He used the donated money to get a haircut at a shelter. He washed his clothes at a laundromat. He stood a little taller, and people noticed.
Marcus, a construction worker who passed by every morning, stopped one day with an offer. "Listen, I can't give you a full-time job, but I need someone to help clean up our work sites in the evenings. It's not much, but it pays, and you can bring Lucky." Thomas felt tears sting his eyes. "I haven't worked in 5 years." "Then it's time to start again," Marcus said firmly. "Be there at 6 p.m. Don't be late." Thomas wasn't late. He showed up early, Lucky by his side. The work was hard. His body wasn't used to it. But Thomas pushed through. For the first time in years, he earned money through his own labor. The pride he felt was overwhelming. Lucky stayed nearby while Thomas worked, watching over him like a guardian angel with 4 legs and a wagging tail. The transformation. Over the following months, Thomas's life changed in ways he never imagined possible. The consistent work with Marcus led to more hours. Other contractors heard about the reliable homeless man with the loyal dog and offered jobs too. Thomas started saving money. The community rallied around him. The local shelter offered Thomas a temporary room, a church donated clothes, a dentist fixed his broken teeth for free. Each act of kindness built upon the last. But Thomas never forgot where he came from. Every Sunday he returned to his old corner, not to beg, but to hand out sandwiches to those still living on the streets. Lucky walked beside him, greeting each person with gentle kindness. "I was you," Thomas would tell them. "I know the darkness, but I also know there's light. Sometimes it comes from the most unexpected places." One year after that frozen night when Thomas shared his last meal, he did something incredible. He rented a small apartment, his own place. 4 walls, a roof, heat, and safety. The caseworker at the shelter cried when she helped him move in. "You did it, Thomas. You really did it." Thomas shook his head, looking down at Lucky, who was exploring his new home with excited sniffs. "No, we did it. None of this happens without Lucky. He saved me as much as I saved him." But the story doesn't end there, because what Thomas did next inspired an entire movement that's still changing lives today. Paying it forward. Thomas could have settled into his new life and forgotten his past. Many people would have. But Thomas had learned something profound during his years on the street. You're never too broken to give, and you're never too poor to share. He started volunteering at the animal shelter where Lucky had received care. He helped match homeless individuals with rescue dogs, creating the same bond that had saved his life. The program, which he called Lucky's Friends, paired people experiencing homelessness with dogs who needed homes. The results were extraordinary. Studies have shown that homeless individuals with pets are more likely to seek services, maintain treatment programs, and successfully transition into housing. But beyond the statistics, Thomas saw the real impact in people's eyes. The same hope that Lucky had given him now multiplied across dozens of lives. Maria, a veteran struggling with PTSD and living in her car, was matched with a golden retriever named Sunshine. The dog's calm presence helped Maria manage her anxiety enough to complete job training. Today, Maria works as a medical assistant, and Sunshine goes to work with her every day. James, a recovering addict, found purpose in caring for a 3-legged pit bull named Hope. "When I wanted to give up," James said, "I looked at Hope, who never gave up despite losing a leg, and I found my strength." Thomas's story spread beyond Chicago. News outlets across the country featured Lucky's Friends. Donations poured in. Other cities started similar programs. What began with half a sandwich on a frozen corner became a national movement. But Thomas remained humble. "I'm not a hero," he'd tell reporters. "I just shared what little I had with someone who needed it. Lucky did the rest." That's what real kindness is. It's not about having much to give. It's about giving what you have. And that is the science behind the bond.
What Thomas and Lucky experienced isn't just a heartwarming story. Science backs it up. Research published in the Journal of Psychiatric Research found that the human-animal bond triggers the release of oxytocin, often called the love hormone. This hormone reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, and increases feelings of trust and bonding. For homeless individuals who often experience chronic stress and trauma, this biological response can be life-changing. Dogs provide non-judgmental companionship, routine, and purpose. They offer something to care for when people feel they have nothing left to give. Dr. Rebecca Chen, a psychologist specializing in homelessness and mental health, studied programs like Lucky's Friends. Her findings were remarkable. We found that homeless individuals with companion animals showed significantly higher rates of medication compliance, kept more appointments, and reported better overall mental health. The dogs provided what human services sometimes can't: unconditional love and acceptance. But there's another side to this science. Thomas's act of sharing his food, despite his own desperate hunger, activated reward centers in his own brain. When we help others, even at cost to ourselves, our brains release dopamine and serotonin, chemicals associated with happiness and well-being. Thomas didn't know the neuroscience. He just knew that sharing his sandwich with Lucky felt right. But that instinct, that compassion, literally changed his brain chemistry and started his journey back to hope. The lessons we can all learn. Thomas and Lucky's story isn't just about homelessness or rescue dogs. It's about fundamental truths that apply to all of us. First, you don't need wealth to be generous. Thomas had almost nothing, yet he shared half of it. In our culture, we often think generosity requires abundance. But true generosity is about proportion, not amount. The widow's mite matters more than the millionaire's check. Second, kindness creates ripples. Thomas fed a dog. That dog gave him purpose. That purpose led to work. That work led to stability. That stability led to a program that's helped hundreds of people. One small act multiplied beyond measure. Third, we're often one connection away from hope. Thomas had given up. He was ready to fade away on that corner. But one relationship changed everything. How many people in your life are one connection away from transformation? How many times could you be that connection? Fourth, the vulnerable can be heroes. Society often writes off homeless people as lost causes, as takers rather than givers. Thomas shattered that narrative. Despite having nothing, he gave. Despite being broken, he helped others heal. Heroism isn't about privilege, it's about character. Fifth, every living being has dignity and worth. Thomas saw a dying dog and recognized a fellow soul deserving of compassion. In a world that told him he was worthless, he refused to believe any creature was worthless. That recognition of shared dignity changed 2 lives. Where they are now. Today, 5 years after that frozen night, Thomas runs Lucky's Friends full-time. It's become a registered nonprofit with chapters in 15 cities. They've helped over 500 homeless individuals find housing with a success rate of staying housed that far exceeds traditional programs. Lucky, now an old dog with gray around his muzzle, still comes to the office every day. He greets visitors, comforts nervous shelter dogs, and takes naps in his favorite sunny spot by the window. He's received awards from animal welfare organizations and has met governors, mayors, and celebrities. But his favorite thing is still the same as that first night, being close to Thomas. Thomas speaks at conferences, schools, and churches. He tells his story not to glorify himself, but to challenge others. Everyone in this room has a half sandwich, he tells audiences. Maybe it's time, maybe it's money, maybe it's just attention, but you have something. The question is, will you share it with someone who's hungry? He's been offered book deals and movie rights. He's turned most of them down. This isn't about making me famous, it's about making kindness normal. The apartment Thomas rented that first year, he still lives there. He could afford better now, but he chooses to live simply and donate most of his salary back to Lucky's Friends. I remember what it's like to have nothing. I never want to forget. And now, as this story comes to its conclusion, you face a choice. What will you do with what you've learned? Your half sandwich. This story asks something of you, not money. Although if you're moved to donate to homeless services or animal shelters, that's wonderful. But the real ask is bigger and simpler than that. Look around your life. Where's your half sandwich? What small thing could you share that might change someone's day, week, or life? Maybe it's spending 10 minutes talking to the lonely elderly neighbor everyone ignores, buying coffee for the person behind you in line, calling the friend who's been struggling instead of just texting, volunteering an hour a week at a local shelter, fostering a rescue animal, smiling and making eye contact with the homeless person instead of looking away, using your professional skills to help someone who can't afford them, standing up for someone being treated unfairly, or sharing your own story of struggle to help others feel less alone. The magic of Thomas and Lucky's story isn't that Thomas was special, it's that he was ordinary. He was broken, tired, hungry, and desperate, yet in that state, he still chose kindness, which means you can too. You don't need to be rich, you don't need to be powerful, you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be willing to share your half sandwich. The final truth. Here's what Thomas wants everyone to know. That night, I thought I was saving Lucky, but the truth is, Lucky saved me. When I shared that sandwich, I was giving away food. What I got back was purpose, dignity, hope, and love. I traded half a sandwich for a whole life. That's not charity. That's the best deal I ever made. Lucky can't tell his side of the story in words, but every day he shows it. He shows it in his loyalty, his gentleness with new rescue dogs, and his patience with children who visit the office. He shows it in the way he still sleeps pressed against Thomas every night, as if to say, "I'm here, you're not alone." And that's the final truth of this story. We're all Lucky, and we're all Thomas. We're all hungry for something. We're all capable of sharing what we have, and we're all worthy of love, no matter what corner we're sitting on. The question isn't whether you have enough to share. Thomas proved that you always do. The question is whether you'll recognize the Lucky in your life and tear your sandwich in half. The beggar shared his only meal. The dog gave back a reason to live. What will you share, and what transformation might return to you? The streets are full of people and animals waiting for someone to see them. Be the person who looks. Be the person who shares. Be the person who remembers that kindness costs nothing, but means everything. Start today. Find your half sandwich. Find your Lucky. Change a life. Maybe even your own. Thomas's story reminds us that heroism isn't about grand gestures. It's about small choices made with great love. It's about looking at what little you have and deciding it's enough to share. That frozen night on a Chicago corner, Thomas had nothing, but by sharing it, he gained everything. What will you share today?